The American Civil War, a nation divided. The American Civil War was one of the most defining and devastating conflicts in United States history. It tore the young nation apart, pitting brother against brother in a brutal struggle over freedom, identity, and the future of the country. But how did it begin? What was it really about? And how did it shape the America we know today? Let's explore the story of a divided nation and its long road to unity. Section 1. Roots of Conflict. To understand the Civil War, we need to go back to the early 1800s. America was expanding rapidly, but with growth came tension. The northern states were becoming industrial and favored abolishing slavery. The South, however, remained largely agricultural and depended heavily on enslaved labor for its economy. As new territories were added to the United States, a key question emerged. Would these new states allow slavery or not? The Missouri Compromise of 1820 and later the Compromise of 1850 tried to maintain a balance between free and slave states, but tensions only grew. In 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act led to violent clashes over slavery. By the late 1850s, the divide wasn't just political, it was cultural, moral, and personal. Section 2, the breaking point. The election of Abraham Lincoln. In 1860 was the final straw for many southern states. Although Lincoln did not initially plan to abolish slavery where it already existed, he strongly opposed its expansion. Fearful that their way of life was under threat, 7 southern states seceded from the Union even before Lincoln took office. They formed the Confederate States of America, with Jefferson Davis as their president. When our Confederate forces fired on Fort Sumter in South Carolina in April 1861, the Civil War officially began. Now Section 3, the war begins. What followed was 4 years of bloody and intense conflict. The North, known as the Union, had more men, more factories, and a larger navy. The South, the Confederacy, had better military leadership and was fighting a defensive war on familiar ground. Battles like the Bull Run, Antietam, and Gettysburg became infamous for their scale and brutality. At Antietam, over 22,000 soldiers were killed, wounded, or missing in a single day. In 1863, Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring all slaves in Confederate states to be free. This changed the nature of the war. It was now a battle not just for Union, but for human freedom. Section 4. Turning Points. The war saw pivotal turning points in 1863. At Gettysburg, Union forces halted General Robert E. Lee's advance into the North. Just months later, the Union took control of the Mississippi River after the siege of Vicksburg, splitting the Confederacy in two. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, delivered after the battle, reminded Americans of the core ideals of democracy and equality. Section 5. The End and Aftermath. By 1865, the Confederate forces were exhausted and outnumbered. On April 9, 1865, General Lee surrendered to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. Just 5 days later, tragedy struck. President Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth. The Civil War claimed over 620,000 lives and left the South in ruins. But it also marked a rebirth of the American nation. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th and 15th Amendments aimed to grant citizenship and voting rights to former slaves. Reconstruction began, a long, painful effort to rebuild and redefine America. Conclusion. The American Civil War was more than just a fight between North and South. It was a clash of ideals: freedom versus oppression, unity versus division. The legacy of the Civil War is still felt today in conversations about race, equality, and the meaning of the American promise. It reminds us that democracy is fragile, but also resilient. From the ashes of war rose a stronger, more united nation, but one still working toward its founding ideals. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore more stories from history.